Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Brawn Body Health and Fitness Podcast. I'm super excited to welcome Jeff Flagg onto the podcast today. Jeff is the former long drive champion in golf, and he is now a sports performance specialist where he works with people to help improve their golf game. Jeff and I discuss strength and conditioning for golf today. You're going to love this episode, especially if you're into the sport of golf. Enjoy. Jeff, welcome to the podcast. Super excited to work with you today, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. This is awesome. I've heard a lot about you, and I'm looking forward to chatting.
For sure. We've got a amazing mutual connection in Jorge from PurMotion there. But for people who aren't familiar with you or your backstory in golf or maybe even professional baseball, would you mind filling them in a little bit about who you are and all the amazing things that you've been up to in the world of athletics?
Yeah, I'll give you the Cliff Note version. Baseball is my first career. Played in college at Mississippi State. Got drafted in 2008. Played pro ball for 5 years. Gave it a run. Loved every minute of it, but never put it all together. So was it 2012 was my final season, and then had to go back to school. Sort of unfulfilled. Had to close that chapter and then go back to school and finish that next chapter. And that's sort of when I was always like a self-taught sort of. I grew up with Tiger Woods. He made golf cool. When I was a kid, so I always played golf with the boys and was sort of self-taught on the golf swing side of things. And now I didn't have baseball in my way, I guess. So, I was going to school, spending more time at the golf course, met a golf pro and like measured my swing speeds for the first time. And it was like, oh, like, okay, you got a little bit of juice. And just needed that competitive itch a little bit. Because, I wasn't used to not doing anything in the springtime. And that's when I got into. I'd always watch those long drive competitions. Growing up, it's always on ESPN, and I was like, man, these guys are animals. And I sort of looked at it as it was home run derby for golf. So I sort of had, sort of intimidated, but also on the other side of things, had no expectations, and got into that as a competitor. And I started that in 2013, and then 2014. I just kind of went through all the qualifying and competing, and ended up winning the world championship in long drive in 2014. So kind of a wild ride. It was funny kind of go from like just completely like unfulfilled, and like your life's work in baseball is just sort of like the door gets slammed shut. And then to get into long drive and have that type of success that quickly was pretty cool. Pretty cool. But I've always, I went to school to be, I got my undergrad to be a PT, and then through just athletics and injuries and things, I sort of shifted to kind of more the athletic side and the strength conditioning side of things. So that's always been like a passion of mine. And, kind of going from baseball to golf and being sort of launched into the golf world now, and, power and swing speed and stuff like that. It was sort of a natural sort of progression, I guess. And then sort of I've been in that sort of strength conditioning for golf world ever since 2014. So yeah, kind of a little bit I'm kind of all over the place, but there's some common threads between all those things. And yeah, it's been fun. Hopefully to continue to build.
Yeah, that's incredible. And, I'm very impressed by your overall transition from baseball to golf because while the rotational swing is similar in some instances, the angle is slightly different. And as someone who grew up playing baseball and is now trying to just correct my slice when I hit a golf ball, I feel like there's a bit of a challenge in that transition. So the fact that you were able to go from one to the other and have such incredible success becoming a world champion in a matter of just a couple of years is very impressive. And I'd imagine, you mentioned about the strength and conditioning side there. I'd imagine that some of that training that you do in the weight room had an impact on that and had some carryover to what you saw from an athletic success standpoint as well.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I mean, it's the it's like, and it's like, you probably have. I haven't seen your golf swing, but I'm sure you have some horsepower. It's just a matter of getting it going in the direction you want. And that's sort of the approach that I took, and still try to take. Is like, yes, there are some, overarching, like, you know, benefits, to power and explosiveness in the gym, and things like that. But it's almost like I took the approach of, in the gym, I'm just trying to be a well-balanced, explosive athlete. And then when I'm working on golf, I'm trying to have a good golf swing. I'm trying to work on, like, fundamentals of the golf swing. It wasn't like I'm trying to, because there are some things that you can do for club head speed. You can alter your stance a little bit, your setup a little bit. But I sort of wanted to have a good golf swing. And then, I'm blessed to be 6'6" too, so that helps. But to sort of take the gym of being just a well-rounded athlete, keeping me healthy, and keeping me, explosive and powerful and strong in every direction, and then allow me to just go work on my skill, and sort of tweak the little minutia that is in the golf swing that drives us all nuts. And I just sort of, like, there obviously are common threads, but I almost kept them separate a little bit. It's like I wanted to have a fundamentally sound golf swing, and then just use the gym to support what I do with the club in my hand.
Yeah, I love that. And that's very similar to how I approach things when I work with golfers from a PT standpoint. I actually just had this conversation with a golf guy yesterday. Is, plain and simple, I'm not the guy you want helping you on the golf side. You don't want me being the one to give you feedback and insight on your swing or the swing form, swing mechanics, that sort of thing. I might pick things apart to help, guide our interventions from a PT or strength and conditioning standpoint, but I'm not going to change your golf swing. And if it's a matter of changing the swing, I'm not the person for you. We need to get you to a swing coach. And I think that having the ability to kind of recognize when it's a swing thing versus when it's a PT or strength and conditioning thing, whether that be motor control or just building a bigger engine, as you mentioned, with horsepower, I think having the ability to kind of separate those is very important. And taking it a step further, I think your training approach in the gym should be something that helps prevent you from being in pain when you're out on the course. I don't think that the job of every PT or the job of every strength and conditioning coach out there should be to treat pain. But, if we're hurting halfway through a round, I can almost guarantee you're not going to finish as well as you could have if you were feeling good the whole time.
100%. I mean, it's a couple points on that. It's like, one of the big things that I find myself, because I work with, golfers pretty exclusively now. And, I'm at a club in Florida, and, we have our teaching pros, we have our therapists, and then I kind of see myself as like the middleman, right? Of like almost synthesizing all those, where it's like, and I know enough of the golf swing where I definitely don't want to be a swing coach, right? But it's almost teaching them, like, from the physical side, like cause and effect, right? It's like, all right, if you do this, then this is going to happen. And just along the lines, like what you're saying, it's like not only swing, but physically, it's like, okay, like if like the lower right side of your back is bothering you in the round, like, here's a couple things to like mitigate it. Obviously, not gonna fix it like in the matter, but it's like you want to be able to mitigate these things in the middle of a round, like you said, and giving them that ownership. I think of like, that there's that knowledge base of it, but then also like, hey man, like, we're not fragile. Like, you play golf, and golf isn't the biggest, like, physical, compared to, basketball or tennis or, football and things like that. But like, when you look at the golf swing, like when you look at the degrees of rotation, speed that things are happening, and the speed the club is moving, it's like, well, if you can go out and play golf, like, you can handle a lot. So trying to bring that to the gym a little bit and build that confidence, and not to have that sort of fragile mindset. And because I think that's just I see the people that have that, it's just the capacity and everything just shrinks as you go. It's like giving them that freedom, like, hey, you can do this, you can balance on one leg and do these things. Like there's a freedom that can give, which I think is just nothing but help. Golf's hard enough. It's like
Yeah,
when they're
for
worried
sure.
about their body.
For sure. So it sounds like your overall strength and conditioning approach then is to provide the freedom to move in ways that people want to move, load it appropriately, and then have some type of specificity or carryover to the sport of golf.
100%. 100%. And that's like, especially with the golf, especially, I think, baseball is like, I think training is just overall, it's just newer for the sport of golf. And a lot of the stuff I see there is it's like you said, it's kind of one point of what you just, it's moving, freedom to move, but there's that load, appropriate load factor that is missing a lot of times. And that's sort of what I sort of try to key in on is, and everybody that has seen golf training at all, it's like, oh, you stand on one leg, have a band, and you rotate, or you stand on a ball, or you're bound on unstable surface, and all that's fine and good. But it's like, at some point, like, how do you progress that, and how do you, like, because again, we're creating crazy speeds, especially like me being in the world of long drive. It's like long drive is the fastest ball in sports.
Yep.
So golf, that ball is coming off at, for amateurs, 120, 30 miles an hour, and long drive guys is 220 miles an hour. So it's the strength needed to support that speed. And, a lot of people that come to me, it's like they want to increase that speed. It's just, you need a level of strength to support that in those areas that are supposed to give you rotation. So that's kind of my big thing, is keying in on that sort of, that engine that is creating, or what we want to create, rotation, and getting that as strong and flexible and powerful as we can.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll offer a hot take on some of those things you mentioned here. I've seen on Instagram, TikTok, those sort of things, the golf training of, just like you mentioned, we're going to stand on one leg on some type of stability balance thing, hold our balance while taking some kind of band or cable or cord, and do like very slow controlled rotation. And that's going to help us for golf somehow. Or the other thing I see a lot is med ball throws in like a crunch pattern to help with golf power. And there's two things I don't quite understand. Is one, how slow rotation is going to help prepare us for something quick, explosive. Don't get me wrong, I think there's a time and a place for slow, controlled movement, but if your goal is to hit a golf ball 220 miles an hour, you're probably not going to do that by moving slow. And second, how a med ball crunch, very, quick, explosive, if you want to call it that, loaded flexion movement is going to help us for something that's a lot more rotation based in nature. And those are just two examples I picked off that I see shared a lot for the golf community. And, at least when I looked through your Instagram, it seems like you do a lot of landmine stuff. You've got a whole lot of these cool orange attachments that might come from a company we know, a guy or two with, that allow you to do like a lot of disassociation work. You seem to train at a lot of different variables, and a lot of that is based on rotation, though. You train fast rotation, explosive rotation, and every now and then you hit like some slow controlled stuff, but a lot of it seems to be more geared towards what you're going to be doing in sport. Does that all kind of sound right to you, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think every, it's almost like I look at trying to add rotation into everything, right? Whether that's because it's sort of a hot topic, rotation, anti-rotation, all those things. I know it's that we could argue, people could argue either side of that, but how I look at it is just, it's when you look at an athlete moving in their sport, whatever sport, right? Even something as not anti-rotation, but even something as square as football and things like that. It's like when you look at Barry Sanders change directions, like the rotation at the hips and the ankles and the trunk that has to be there to put yourself. That's kind of when you look at an athlete changing directions, when you look at a golfer, when you look at a baseball player, tennis player, all those things, it's like how I look at it is the mechanics are just is that athlete in a position of leverage on the tool that they're using, right? And the best are, right? I mean, they don't become the best if they're not leveraging the tool that they have, and that's going to make them the most powerful and most efficient. And, the mechanics are the mechanics and the tool is the tool. It's like the big difference between baseball and golf. The tool is different. So the mechanics are going to be different. So when you look at, you look at a baseball player at impact, you look at a golfer at impact, like I use this analogy of like, you could replace that, the best players, the best ball strikers and things like that. You can replace that club or that bat and you can give them an axe and they'd be chopping a tree down, right? They'd be in a good position to chop a tree down, right? So that position of leverage, I just take the same thing to the gym, right? Like you said, I sort of use some crazy tools from a crazy guy. But it's all about leverage, whether it's a cable, whether it's a landmine, whether it's a dumbbell, things like that. It's all about, can you leverage your body against that tool to stress what we want to stress, and not only load, but it's like trying to blend that, again, the two ends of the spectrum of like loading, but then also like controlling and stable, and that's I sort of see that like as the two ends of the spectrum that either get trained separately in golf, where it's like it's either again, not coming at anybody, but it's like the frou like band and air X pad exercises or Olympic lifting. Like there's nothing in between. So it's like it's having load, putting the body in a position where it has the balance and stabilize. And then to me, it's like when you look at those two ends of the spectrum, how I tie that together is like the flow of it, right? There's a tempo to the golf swing. There's a tempo to, when you look at baseball, the biggest thing that pitchers try to do to hitters is get them off timing, right? Get them off balance. That's what an off speed pitch is, right? So it's trying to have a tempo and a flow between reps, right? And you see that with the stuff that I do. It's like it's again another one of the concepts I learned from Jorge is that there's a flow to it. I don't care how heavy it is. I want it to look smooth. And you're like not only fighting the weight with whatever you're doing, but you're fighting to make it look smooth. And to me, that's when, whether you talk about when an athlete gets nervous or, fatigued, it's like, what's the first, everything gets choppy and tense and things like that. And in rotational sports, there's a flow to moving. And my approach is like train that as much as we can, right? Like when you're tired, when you're moving a heavyweight, when you're moving a lightweight. But if you can leverage the tool and flow, like, to me, that's going to speak to what you're trying to do in your sport more directly than just what's the absolute amount of weight that I can lift,
Yep. Yeah, I'm completely following you. And it's funny, we talk about that flow or flow state psychologically all the time, being like in the flow state during your sport, but we never really apply it to the physical sense as it comes to movement or training. But it makes a lot of sense. Can we get into a movement flow? Can we get into the point where reps are consistent, similar speed, similar, whatever metric you want to look at there? I really like your take on that. And I like your approach. And kind of like you said, maybe golf training should not all be done with Olympic weightlifting or, power cleans, clean and jerk, that sort of thing. And maybe golf training should not just be us putting people on one leg on an Air X pad and saying, yep, golf training. Maybe the right answer is somewhere in between, somewhere in the middle. And, I think that there's a lot of cool, unique new devices being developed to further help with that too. And I think it's interesting how a lot of these patterns we look at kind of relate to where we came from in the past too. Like if we think back ancestrally, there's this forward combo: lifting, fighting, sprinting, dancing. You might have heard from someone before.
Yeah.
And we think about the golf movement and we think, okay, what the heck does that have to do with any of those things? But if we think about just the ability to rotate in a single direction and produce a lot of power while holding something, it's like, okay, actually, I can see that relating to something like fighting or something like that. So I kind of like how, even though it's a modern sport and we're using a modern training approach, there's still some human evolution connections there. On that point too, we talked a bit about the training, but I think that a key component of training is having the ability to measure your success. So when it comes to your training, what kind of key performance indicators are you looking at when you're working with golfers or when you're training yourself? How do you know what you're doing is working, and what metrics are you looking at?
So really, I mean, kind of my progression is like, I definitely look at qualitative first, right? Like there's the ground rules of the particular exercises, and that's like sort of priority number one. It's like I really work with somebody new, or like a pro guy or things like that. Like it's quality first. I'm never going to try to rush, because I've been I've learned that over the course of my career, like especially with the rotation exercises, if there's not a concept, or if you're taking, like I said, there's always nuance and little differences in these things. So it's like, if you're taking an approach of, somebody in their golf swing can think of, oh, I need more separation, right? But then if you load up, if you load up the mopping bar, I don't know if I've already talked about that. I know I've posted that a little bit, but you load up that mopping bar that I use and try to create as much separation as you can, like you're going to be on the floor pretty quickly. And that's obviously not what we want. That's priority number one, is to stay healthy. So it's really tapping into like what should be doing the move and what should be moving, from a mechanics standpoint. And again, I think it goes into that leverage point where it's like, it's weird. I'm not used to moving like this in the gym. Like I'm used to just like going in there and loading up the trap bar and picking it up, put it down, and go to the cable machine. And it's such a shame. I don't get off point, but like the cable machine, like the free motion machines and stuff like that, they're like my favorite tool ever. And anytime I go to a gym, it's like sitting in the corner and people are doing chest flies on it, and it's like, man, there's so much we can do with that thing. But it's some different tools, and that's like my biggest sort of focus first. And then I look at obviously looking at individuals and what do they need to feel, right? What is the sport giving them? So I sort of kind of have the checklist of like, okay, golf swing, right-handed golfer, he's in these positions, sort of, he's creating force from right to left, side bend to the right, like. So looking at, can we fill the buckets that he's not getting in his sport from a movement standpoint? And so that's like sort of kind of number two, is like, okay, well, can he rotate the same, like left to right in the gym? Like, I'm not going to say swing the golf club left-handed, or things like that. He can if you want, but it's more are we touching every movement pattern that our bodies are designed to, holistically, sort of in the training side of things, and so to let him do his sport and be free doing his sport. And then I look at sort of density and tonnage and things like that. Once like the fundamentals are hit with the mechanics, then it's like, okay, we can look at, all right, I don't like to be in the gym more than 45 minutes, maybe an hour, because again, it's like I'm working with golfers. It's like nobody likes a gym, but it's like, how effective can we be in a short amount of time? And then I have a few little, kind of apps and things that I use to, one thing I like to look at is, and kind of, keying in on the engine, right? Especially with golfers is that rib cage turning, moving in space, right? So I have an app that I use where I'll do it before and after a session just to sort of test it, where it's like, how has the workout, I want it to be positively affected, but has it, I definitely don't want to walk out of the workout tighter than you were before, because a lot of times it's like we're golf, there's no off season. Pro guys, amateurs, everybody plays all the time, right? So it's like trying to fit in training, and it's like sometimes they're going to go hit balls and they're going to go play after we train. So I don't want to not train. I don't want to, I want to train hard and heavy and full range and all that, but it's also like I want you to feel fresh walking out of there. So if we can keep the ownership of your range of motion from when you walk in, get you loose, get you open, and then you can walk out, you've done some work, but your range of motion hasn't changed, so your feel hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot. Like, you can go out and you can play your sport, and it's not an issue. So that's like, again, from a consistency and sustainability side of things, it's like if people came in and we just lifted heavy, but range of motion sort of tightened up as they walk out, it's like, I'm getting in the way of golf, and that's not what I want to do at all.
You mean to tell me you don't like deadlift rep max and ego lifting squats for golfers? Really? I love
it, and I also, and that goes into like the confidence piece, right? It's like,
yep.
And again, it's like you want to live to fight another day, and to be able to, I get 70-year-old golfers that like we'll do like heavy one leg deadlifts, but it'll be like one set, and be like, and it's like, okay, you can do it, boom, stimulate, get out, like, and to be able to, like, and then obviously you build on that, but like just to be able to give them that stimulus of like loading weight, balance, like in rotational patterns, things like that. But it's not so far to the other end of the spectrum of, sort of like, what do you got to do when you're lifting heavy weights, like a, trap bar deadlift, barbell deadlift, whatever. It's like, you got to brace up, you got to tighten everything up. And where golf is just the opposite of that.
Right. You're compressed.
Yeah. So it's like, you got to be able to, not to say that doesn't have any value, but it's just being able to like inject it where the meat of the program is sort of respecting the rotational patterns and freeing that body up to turn as best it can.
Yeah, I'll offer a slightly sarcastic other take real quick. You mean to tell me you can just do one set of an exercise and you don't have to 3 sets of 10 every single thing? What? Who knew?
I'm just we're freewheeling over here, but
no, I love your focus on the goal and the intention, and that training is meant to support the sport. The sport is the goal here. We're not trying to be the best at exercising, as Kenny Powers said. We play real sports here. So
and that's like a challenge I have, because it's like, obviously it's my job, it's what I do, and I feel strongly about what I do. But then it's also like, on the other hand, it's like, I'm not saying I don't matter, but like, it's like what I do is not, it's like nobody's making their money, nobody's sinking putts with me, right? It's almost like a necessary evil. So it's like, it's almost like I sort of joke about that with my clients. It's like, and again, I spin it to put the ownership on them, where it's like, hey man, you walked in here, like you want, they've been complaining to me, you walked in here, so it's giving them that ownership. And it's like, you put in the work, you got to go hit the shots, you got to go make the putts, like so yeah, it's one of those, and I think as you grow with it, as people that have been with me a long time, it should feel like almost recovery, right?
Yeah.
It kind of encouraging them to come in, because it doesn't hurt. When you load the body well, it's like, I know, I feel it when I don't train, right, from traveling or family or whatever. It's like, when I don't train, it's like, it hurts, but then I go in and do it, it's like medicine.
Yep. Exercise is medicine, as they say. And, ultimately, I think this is sort of the protect your investment part of the discussion, right? Like, you might want to be golfing 5, 6, 7 days a week, And when you're 18, 20, even in your 30s and 40s, the college age, the young professional, or just the young recreational golfer, you can probably get away with that without issue. I think it, at least, I'm starting to feel the effects of this at 25, but I think at a young age, you're made of rubber and magic. You can do whatever you want, and we don't always have an explanation as to how.
Yeah.
But as you start to get, I'll use the term older,
Hmm.
you might want to continue to golf and be active and do things. But it might become more difficult for you if you aren't staying on top of some of the different things like your overall capacity to move, your overall ability to produce force, because we tend to lose muscle as we get older.
Hmm.
So, I'm just thinking about like my grandfather right now talking about this. He's in his mid to late 70s and he golfs 6 days a week out in the Arizona heat.
Hmm.
Most people at that age, they get a couple games of golf in a week, but they're not golfing every single day over and over and over again.
Hmm.
But because he trains regularly, because he's taking care of himself, staying healthy, active, I think that kind of plays into it. And I think the same thing is true here. We say the term athlete, and a lot of times we think about the high schooler or the college or the ones we see on TV. We don't often think about the 60 to 70-year-old, but they're just as much of an athlete as the 18-year-old. They're doing the same sport. They might do things slightly differently, or maybe they take a little bit longer on certain things, but they're still doing the same thing. And I think if you train them appropriately, they can continue to play the sport they want for a long time, and they can train safely, they can load safely, they can do, all the same things. It's just a matter of, do we modify it to what they need at their specific point, specific adaptation to impose demand.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's important with a sustainable training program. Is like so much of the industry is 8 week 12-week program, like it's like sort of just such an acute sort of thing where and again, like, nothing wrong with that, but sort of what I try to tell people initially is like, hey, and I don't want to squash their excitement to start getting started and working out, but it's like, hey, like this is going to be like a long, like this is going to be a long process with me. It's like, you're going to, you better, I hope you like me. Cause like, it's the, the sustainable longevity piece of it is, that's where the magic is, right? It compounds over time. And that's why, it's like little injections to start. And then you start to feel, because there's that hump that people have to get over of like, I got to go to the gym. It hurts. I'm sore. And then it's like, there's that hump of, okay, I got to go to the gym so I don't hurt and I'm not sore, and getting people over that hump that maybe haven't trained in the past, things like that is super important. But like, that's like with the movements and the tools that I implement, it's, and currently I work with, let's see, 15 is probably the youngest, up to people in their 80s, and pro golfers, amateur golfers, and everything in between. And so it's like, the same rules apply across all of it. Obviously, the intensity and the complexity of things is a little different for those that make a living golfing or are younger. But it's like, and the load and all those things. But to me, that's a sign of a sustainable training program. Is like, can I do it when I'm 15? Can I do it when I'm 80? Okay, well, maybe the movement like speaks to how the body should move, and respects individual requirements, like shoulder replacements, back fusions, all those things. It's like it's sort of been a stress test for me, but it's been great, like to be able to load these these older golfers with exercises that they necessarily wouldn't have touched because they've had a major surgery, and it's that fragility, sort of I mean, I get it. I have all my original parts, but I can imagine when you have to go in and have a surgery that there's a feel in the back of your mind like, I shouldn't do that. And if I can obviously doing it smartly, but to chip away at that and to give them that freedom back, I think is that's sort of my main goal.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that. And that goes back to everything we talked about before, the whole goal of training, the purpose of training, and ultimately allowing people to have the freedom to do what they want to do in life. I think that's essential. As we start to wrap up here today, Jeff, do you have any kind of closing thoughts or closing remarks or anything we might have missed as we were discussing training and golf?
I mean, we covered a good bit. I mean, there's so much like nuance to things, right? Like
Yep.
it's all like, that's why I love getting in the weeds with people, just because there's fields, and like you said, it's motor control, it's how you swing the golf club. Like if you played tennis when you were a kid and you play golf now, it's like there's some feels to the sports that you played when you were younger. So it's like kind of just that's what I try to do is like blend sort of, okay, like you feel that like weight on the inside of your foot, like so when you're doing this move with the landmine, like feel like that pressure on the inside of your foot as you pull up or as you rotate or things like that. So it's like trying to again trying to make it as frictionless as possible, I would say, with training and loading the body and things like that. And that's my big thing with the rotation stuff is trying to, and I kind of, again, it's elementary to you, but like when you just look at the body, right, and you just look at just how the lats wrap around and the obliques and all those things, it's like, okay, like how do we load that? How do we load that muscle fully, completely, and things like that? And that's where it's like, I know you've seen on my social media, but like, that's one of the big things with with Jorge and his martial arts background is you're going to find yourself in odd positions and maybe not the most anatomically efficient positions, but it's like, can I train there obviously slowly and build up so I'm strong there? And that's where it's like the different tools allow me to do that. Rotation with side bend, extension, flexion, all those sort of big rocks of movement competencies. And so there really is, when you're moving the golf club, it's a dynamic movement, but it's easy. It's you get more output with less effort. That's sort of the whole deal, this whole thing. So and that's when you to me, I haven't found that you can do that with sort of traditional tools. Like you said, I sort of got astray, go down the road a little bit and use some of the crazy things. But to me, it's not crazy. But I know there's been years in the past where I've been traveling, and I take these bars into the the Lifetime gym or whatever, and it's like people look at me funny, like it's like, hey man, like this is training to me. Like I don't know, it's like you may do your squat, bench, and chest flies and things like that. Like this is what training should look like for me, because rotational athlete demands are different, and that's what I do, that's what I want to do, and that's what I want to continue to do, and haven't had any that's I think the other piece of the training for the demands of the sport and exceeding the demands of the sport. I'm sure George mentioned that is that at 37 I can roll out of bed and go. I did a golf school last week, and I don't compete anymore in long drive, but within 5 balls I could get up over 200 miles an hour of ball speed. And not to toot my own horn, but it's like I don't practice golf that much currently, and it's like just the training has allowed me to do that. Right, I can just roll out of bed and go. I don't advise it all the time, but it's that ability that you're always sort of ready, especially with rotation stuff. Because what does everybody do? Right, we get out of our airplane seats, or we get out, back away from the computer. Oh gosh, just I'm tight, I'm stiff, my back's stiff, and it's like, when you train, when you put the hay in the barn, with your training, really hammering rotationally and getting strong, getting mobile there, it's like, okay, like, yeah, you may be a little stiff, but like, boom, you can get out of it, and you can go do what you want to do. Right. And that's, again, it goes into that overarching theme. But you know, that's sort of, you know, you can have that freedom, I guess. The way to wrap it up is like it's so many people get a little spooked with rotation exercises and things like that, but there are ways to do it in a way that's going to strengthen you and not, you know, blow your back up.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think it's funny when we talk about things like the back, everyone always says, well, don't bend, lift, or twist. And golf kind of involves all three. So it's like we kind of need to find a way to be good at all of them. And, you know, I think it's funny there. Usually when I'm talking with a golfer, the BYOB term refers to bring your own beer to the course, not bring your own bar to the gym. But
I like
you know, I think
I'll
that you're not most golfers here, Jeff. I don't know many golfers who have gone from professional baseball into golf and won a world champion in the long drive in golf in such a short time. So it's certainly very impressive what you've done and what you're continuing to do today in the world of strength and conditioning and human performance. For people who want to keep up with you, I know you said you're in your 30s there, so you're probably more MySpace generation, or have you transitioned into Instagram, TikTok, Threads, all that sort of
man. Oh man, I'm so Snapchat was the one that was like, yeah, I'm getting past. This is too much for me.
right.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, kind of primarily, at Jeff_Flagg. I'm actually in the next couple months, hopefully. I've kind of been building a website for training and stuff like that. So I've been late to the game, talking about it forever, but finally doing it. So in the next couple months, that should be launching as well. So I'll definitely be probably loud about that when it comes out. But yeah, it's not too hard to find.
Awesome. We will link to that below, and you know, when that website drops, let me know and we'll link to that as well. Jeff,
Awesome.
It was awesome chatting with you today. Really appreciate your time and everything you offered us.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Brawn Body Health and Fitness Podcast. If you liked this episode, please make sure to share it with a friend, subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes, and leave a review. This way we can spread knowledge and motivation and help reach more people. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time.